Film is a flexible medium and can often be shaped by the world around it. Cinema will change with the times and integrate newer elements to continue growing, but what does it mean when the changes come from a bad real-life experience? While movies and television are no stranger to feeling dated or old-fashioned due to exuding a certain aspect of the time they were created in, something like COVID-19 could leave a unique stain on the medium as a whole. The recent pandemic has proven large enough that it could be considered one such crisis event. The question stands, however, is it going to impact cinema in the long run? In this video, I'll look at two other examples that change the format and see if COVID could be one such event. World War I changed a lot more about how cinema worked than many people would expect. Between 1914 and 1918, films had a big influence over the populace, whether as a means of escapist entertainment or as patriotic propaganda. While still seen as a new novelty pastime, theaters were instrumental in boosting the economy, and therefore important enough to use practically to further the war front's interests and needs. The American film industry had a pretty straightforward list of movie types for the era, featuring typical romances, comedies, and melodramas. Movies that didn't require a lot of depth or uniqueness in order to satisfy its audience. However, the war caused a shift in various familiar systems throughout the world, and movie making had one that changed its very framework forever. Movies started to feature newer types of stories, ones that featured higher stakes and less repeated elements. They suddenly had a heavier emphasis on plot and offered more impact and weight than the silent films of old. And under the span of a few years, cinema changed from short vignette-type programs which predominantly focused on slapstick and basic premises to feature films with more grounded ideals and focused plot lines. This arguably helped pave way for bigger shifts in the filmmaking status quo, which included introducing synchronized audio.
It's all right. I'll kick you in. How can you see if I don't? Now, Mama, stop now.
Creating colored pictures.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
And basically leading to every motion picture epic released afterwards. COVID has already caused a prominent change in how people watch films, with the lockdown causing a shutdown of theaters and a surgence of streaming services. While they were prevalent before the pandemic, they became an essential aspect of watching newer options, and films released theatrically already have online debuts close to their screen debuts. This feels like it'll be a permanent change which has already come with its positive and negative aspects, and it's unclear which one people will gravitate more towards with things going forward. "9/11 left a deep scar on the world, one that still hasn't healed to this day. Just seeing the towers in any film resulted in a lot of uncomfortable feelings, and as such, films at the time juggled back and forth between taking them out to avoid the topic or reinserting them in to create a sense of national pride and reinvigorating a positive spirit that was desperately needed, especially for the American population.
Man, you mess with New York! You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us!
It permanently altered what could be shown in action films, where suddenly city-leveling violence wasn't something that people wanted to see, even in stuff like kids' films and cartoons. In a time when media was already being heavily censored for being too violent, this event only made it stricter. It also greatly changed how a lot of action villains are portrayed. Within the 80s and 90s, terrorists that were in a similar vein to those responsible for the attack fit alongside villains from movies like Die Hard and The Crying Game.
They are about to be taught a lesson in the real use of power. You will be witnesses.
Yet 9/11 changed it so that Taliban-like terrorists are given no characterization or even real motivation, instead only bloodthirsty beasts who just want to kill. It painted a clear picture of who and what was the most despised group of people in America's and the world's viewpoint, as even infamously monstrous killer groups like the KKK and the Nazis have had movies where they have been given a sense of character or at least identity.
I might add also that any information that makes a performance of my duty easier will not be met with punishment. Actually, quite the contrary, it will be met with reward.
While you're bound to find a low-stakes film on groups with blackened histories, with characters that were monsters yet had defined roles, any film connected with those responsible for 9/11 are always going to be realistically uncomfortable and gritty, and you would struggle to remember a single villain's name. With COVID, movies like Contagion recently resurfaced because of how relevant it was to the current mindset, especially with how accurate it captured the experience.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Despite this, will movies in the future try to replicate the event as an easy drama tool, or will it be ignored and untasteful to show as a film? There are already movies now that are using the pandemic as a narrative focal point for an otherwise generic action movie.
COVID-23 has mutated.
And the world definitely hasn't been a stranger to pandemic-based movies, from realistic illnesses to hypothetical extremes.
We never thought it would happen.
Nobody gets in or out of their town now, is that clear?
But will the world grow to commercialize the event in a manner similar to the Titanic, where the event was treated with respect but was used as a tool for a romance, or will it be something that most people will want to avoid, like whenever a film tried to use 9/11 within a different genre? COVID will be something people will remember for a long time to come, and in terms of how that is translated into film, it could be believed that while not as prevalent or influential as these previous options, the crack is starting to show that it will leave some noticeable differences, whether for better or worse. It has similar experiences to the previously mentioned examples, but don't reach the extreme changes they have made, and it's still unclear just what cinema will truly look like in a few years' time.